Do you ever think about those car features from the 1970s that would get you pulled over or fined today? Back then, these features defined how families traveled and how drivers trusted machines built before safety became law. So what changed that made the cars we loved illegal to drive the same way? Riding without seatbelts was not just common in the 1970s, it was practically the default setting for every family car on the road. People slid across vinyl bench seats, leaned out windows, and bounced around on long highway trips without anything holding them in place. Parents drove with one arm draped over the passenger seat while children roamed freely in the back. The idea of clicking into a restraint felt unnecessary, almost insulting to drivers who believed their reflexes were protection enough. Seatbelts existed in most vehicles, but they stayed tucked between the seat cushions, ignored like an optional feature nobody asked for. People trusted themselves, trusted the road, and trusted the belief that accidents only happened to other families. When crash data revealed the brutal truth about unrestrained passengers, lawmakers moved quickly to change everything. Today, driving without a seatbelt is illegal in almost every state, with fines waiting for anyone who refuses to buckle up. What once felt like personal freedom is now considered reckless endangerment from an era that measured safety by luck instead of law. Children riding on parents' laps in the front seat was one of those tender family moments that defined road trips in the 1970s. Kids loved being up front where the action was, hands sometimes resting on the steering wheel while a parent pretended to let them help drive. It felt warm, connected, and natural, the kind of bonding experience families treasured during long summer drives. Nobody imagined that a sudden stop could turn a child into a projectile, launched toward the dashboard faster than any parent could react. The physics of impact were not part of everyday conversation, and families simply trusted that closeness meant safety. Parents held their children tightly, believing their arms were strong enough to protect against anything the road might deliver. Today, this practice is strictly illegal under child passenger safety laws, requiring approved car seats and rear-facing positions for younger children. The image of a toddler perched happily on a parent's lap while the car cruised down the highway now feels like watching disaster unfold. What was once family togetherness has become a cautionary tale about dangers we never saw coming. Metal dashboards without padding were standard in cars throughout the 1970s, gleaming with chrome accents and hard surfaces that looked impressive but offered no forgiveness during a collision. Drivers admired the sleek design, the way sunlight reflected off polished steel, and the durability that came with solid construction. Nobody thought about what would happen if a face slammed into that unyielding surface at 30 miles per hour. The dashboard was simply part of the car, as trusted as the engine, and questioning its safety never crossed anyone's mind. Families placed drinks on those hard surfaces without realizing they were lining up missiles for any sudden stop. Children who stood between the front seats were inches away from metal edges sharp enough to cause serious injury. Crash testing eventually revealed the horrifying damage these dashboards inflicted, prompting regulations mandating energy-absorbing materials. Today, padded dashboards with crumple zones and airbag integration are required by federal standards. The polished surfaces that once symbolized craftsmanship are now recognized as deadly hazards from an era prioritizing style over survival. Protruding hood ornaments were the crowning jewels of 1970s automobiles, standing tall on the front of luxury cars like tiny trophies announcing wealth and taste. Drivers polished them proudly, and children loved watching them glint in the sunlight as the car cruised through neighborhoods. These ornaments were status symbols, miniature sculptures that transformed ordinary vehicles into statements of personality. Nobody considered what happened when a pedestrian was struck by a car moving at any speed. The ornament became a weapon, a rigid metal spike positioned at the wrong height to cause maximum damage to anyone in its path. Emergency rooms documented injuries ranging from deep lacerations to puncture wounds, all caused by decorative features serving no practical purpose. When safety researchers connected these ornaments to pedestrian fatalities, regulators stepped in with standards requiring breakaway designs or removal. Today, fixed protruding hood ornaments are banned under pedestrian safety regulations in most countries. The proud symbols that once defined automotive elegance are now considered unacceptable hazards, reminders that beauty should never cost human life. Leaded gasoline powered nearly every car on American roads during the 1970s, pumped freely at stations where attendants never thought twice about the fumes drifting into the air. The sweet chemical smell became associated with road trips and the excitement of filling up before a long drive. Families breathed it in at every station, children played nearby while tanks filled, and nobody imagined invisible particles were settling into lungs and bloodstreams. Lead was added to fuel because it improved engine performance, a solution that seemed reasonable before anyone understood the consequences. Scientists eventually discovered lead exposure caused developmental delays in children, neurological damage in adults, and environmental contamination requiring decades to clean. The revelation was staggering, turning an everyday product into a public health crisis. Regulators phased out leaded gasoline throughout the 70s and 80s, replacing it with unleaded formulas mandatory for all new vehicles. Today, using leaded fuel in standard automobiles is illegal, and the era of breathing toxic fumes at the pump feels like a collective nightmare. Nobody wants to remember. Children riding in the open cargo beds of pickup trucks was a summer tradition that defined rural childhood in the 1970s. Kids piled into the back with dogs, coolers, and fishing gear, wind whipping through their hair as the truck bounced down dirt roads toward lakes and campsites. Parents saw it as harmless fun, a way to give children fresh air and freedom while making room for adults in the cab. The bed became an outdoor living room where siblings laughed, wrestled, and watched the world pass by from a perspective no car seat could offer. Nobody talked about what happened during sudden stops or the unthinkable moment when a child bounced over the tailgate. The dangers were real but invisible, hidden behind smiles and the comfortable assumption that bad things only happened to other families. When accident reports revealed devastating injuries and fatalities, states began passing laws restricting passengers in truck beds. Today, riding in an open cargo area is illegal for children in most states and heavily restricted for adults. The carefree image of kids waving from the back of a pickup has become a haunting reminder of risks once considered perfectly acceptable. Cars without collapsible steering columns were death traps hiding in plain sight throughout the 1970s. The steering column ran straight from the wheel to the engine compartment, a rigid metal shaft that became a spear during frontal collisions. Drivers gripped their wheels confidently, never imagining the mechanism giving them control could impale them in a crash. The physics were brutal. When a car stopped suddenly, the driver's body continued forward, and the column was waiting like an immovable obstacle. Families trusted their vehicles completely, unaware this design flaw had killed countless drivers in otherwise survivable accidents. Investigators studying crash fatalities noticed a disturbing pattern of chest injuries caused by steering column impacts. Automotive engineers developed collapsible designs that absorbed energy and moved away from the driver during impact. Regulations soon required these life-saving features in all new vehicles, making old rigid columns illegal. Today, driving a car with a non-collapsible steering column feels like volunteering for disaster, and what was once standard equipment is now recognized as one of automotive history's most dangerous oversights. Bench seats without headrests invited a specific kind of injury that doctors came to dread during the 1970s. These wide, flat seats stretched across the front of cars like living room couches, offering plenty of room but no support for the head and neck during rear-end collisions. People loved the spacious feeling and how three adults could squeeze into the front row. Nobody thought about whiplash, the violent snapping motion occurring when a stationary vehicle was struck from behind. Without a headrest to catch the skull, necks hyperextended backward with force enough to cause permanent damage to vertebrae and nerve tissue. Emergency rooms filled with patients suffering injuries that proper head restraints could have prevented. When medical researchers quantified the epidemic of neck injuries from missing headrests, regulators demanded change. Federal standards now require adjustable head restraints in all seating positions, designed to prevent the backward snap causing so much suffering. Cars with headrest-free bench seats are no longer street legal, and the spacious front rows of the 70s have been redesigned with safety taking priority. Rear-facing jump seats in station wagon cargo areas were the unofficial kids section of family road trips during the 1970s. Children sat facing backward, watching cars behind them shrink while playing games and making faces at other drivers. Parents loved having kids contained in the back, away from the main cabin where conversations could happen without interruption. The setup felt clever, a way to maximize passenger capacity without buying a larger vehicle. What families did not consider was the complete lack of crash protection in that rearmost section. No crumple zones existed behind those seats, no reinforced structures absorbed impact energy, and no restraints handled rear-end collisions. A child sitting in that backward-facing position during a crash was essentially unprotected, vulnerable to forces that could eject them through the rear window. As crash testing revealed the horrifying vulnerability of these positions, automakers eliminated them entirely. Station wagons with rear-facing cargo seats are no longer manufactured, and installing aftermarket versions violates federal safety standards. The setup that once symbolized adventure now represents unimaginable risk. Cars without catalytic converters pumped raw exhaust directly into the atmosphere during the 1970s, filling the air with pollutants that turned city skies brown and made breathing difficult. Drivers noticed nothing wrong because cars ran smoothly and nobody connected their tailpipe to the smog hanging over highways. The chemical soup pouring from exhaust systems included carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons, and nitrogen oxides, all contributing to respiratory illness and environmental damage. People complained about dirty air without realizing their vehicles were part of the problem. Scientists studying urban pollution traced contamination directly to vehicle emissions, and the evidence demanded action. The Clean Air Act and subsequent regulations required catalytic converters on all new vehicles, dramatically reducing harmful exhaust components. Today, removing or tampering with a catalytic converter is a federal offense carrying significant fines. Driving a car without this emission control device is illegal in every state, and the smog-choked skies of the 70s remain a reminder of what happens when convenience ignores consequence. Lap-only seatbelts without shoulder harnesses were standard equipment in the 1970s, a half measure that gave drivers false confidence while leaving upper bodies unrestrained. People clicked that single strap across their waist and believed they were protected, never realizing a frontal collision would send their head and chest flying forward. The belt held hips in place while skulls cracked against steering wheels and chests slammed into dashboards. Families drove across the country trusting one thin piece of fabric, unaware that proper restraint required shoulder and torso protection. Children sat in back seats with only lap belts, their small bodies folding forward during crashes in ways causing devastating internal injuries. Investigators noticed patterns of damage that three-point harnesses could have prevented entirely. When research proved lap-only belts actually increased certain injuries by creating a hinge point at the waist, regulators mandated shoulder restraints. Today, vehicles without three-point seat belts in all positions cannot legally be sold or registered. The simple lap belt that once seemed adequate is now recognized as dangerously incomplete. Cars with fuel tanks positioned behind the rear axle were engineering disasters waiting for the wrong collision during the 1970s. Designers placed gas tanks in the most vulnerable location imaginable, directly in the crush zone where rear-end impacts concentrated their force. Families loaded luggage, strapped in children, and drove these vehicles without any idea that a collision could rupture the tank and spray fuel across hot metal. The explosions and fires that followed were not freak accidents, but predictable consequences of terrible design. People burned alive in vehicles that crumpled exactly as engineers should have anticipated. The lawsuits that followed revealed internal documents showing companies knew the risks, but calculated settlements would cost less than redesigning fuel systems. When federal regulations finally addressed tank placement and crash resistance, changes came too late for families who already paid the ultimate price. Today, fuel tank positioning and puncture resistance are strictly regulated, and vehicles failing these standards cannot be sold. The flaming wrecks of the 70s became the reason modern cars protect their fuel systems like precious cargo. Protruding interior door handles were elegant design features that became weapons during 1970s car crashes. These chrome handles stuck out from door panels at the wrong angle. waiting to catch arms, ribs, and skulls as occupants were thrown around during collisions. Drivers admired how substantial these handles felt, never imagining the damage they could inflict in a fraction of a second. During side impacts, passengers slammed against doors and found these rigid protrusions puncturing skin and cracking ribs. Children sitting against doors suffered worst, their smaller bodies positioned at exactly the height where handles became blunt instruments. Crash investigators documented these injuries so consistently the pattern became impossible to ignore. Engineers eventually redesigned door handles to be recessed, padded, or positioned to minimize contact during impacts. Federal safety standards now require interior surfaces to meet strict criteria for energy absorption. The stylish handles that once defined automotive luxury are now considered unacceptable hazards from an era when appearance mattered more than survival. Cars without a third brake light left drivers guessing during the 1970s, with only two low-mounted taillights to signal a sudden stop. Following drivers watched for that red glow near bumper level, often obscured by trunk lids, cargo, or the vehicle's design. Rear-end collisions happened constantly because brake signals were too low, too dim, or too easily lost in traffic. People slammed into cars ahead of them and blamed their own reflexes, never considering that better warning systems could have prevented impact entirely. The pattern repeated millions of times on highways and city streets, each collision causing whiplash and injuries that a single additional light could have reduced. Researchers studying brake light visibility found that a center-high mounted stop lamp dramatically decreased rear-end crashes. When regulators mandated the third brake light in the 1980s, results proved the researchers right almost immediately. Today, vehicles without this center-mounted warning light cannot pass inspection or be registered for road use. The simple addition that seems obvious now was once considered an unnecessary expense by manufacturers prioritizing profits over safety. Chrome bumpers without energy absorption were the beautiful but useless guardians of 1970s automobiles. These gleaming metal strips looked impressive, reflected sunlight dramatically, and gave cars a finished appearance buyers expected. What they did not do was protect anyone during low-speed collisions. A parking lot bump at 5 miles per hour could crumple fenders and shatter headlights because the bumper transferred all impact force directly to body panels. Higher speed crashes were even worse, with bumpers folding like foil and offering no meaningful resistance. Insurance companies watched repair costs skyrocket as minor fender benders became major bodywork projects. Families paid inflated premiums because vehicles could not survive gentle impacts without expensive damage. When regulators demanded bumpers that could withstand 5-mile-per-hour crashes without damage, manufacturers were forced to engineer actual protection. Energy-absorbing bumpers with hydraulic or foam cores replaced decorative chrome strips. Today, bumper standards require measurable crash resistance, and the chrome bars of the 70s have become museum pieces representing style without substance. Sharp metal dashboard knobs and switches turned instrument panels into fields of tiny weapons during 1970s collisions. Every dial, lever, and control that made driving convenient also became a source of injury when bodies flew forward during sudden stops. Radio knobs made of rigid plastic or chrome caught fingers, faces, and foreheads with edges sharp enough to cut. Heater controls, wiper switches, and ventilation dials protruded from dashboards at angles designed for easy access, not crash safety. Children standing between front seats were inches from these hazards, their small faces positioned at exactly the height of dangerous protrusions. People adjusted radios and climate controls without considering what those knobs would do during an accident. When crash testing revealed how much damage these small components caused, regulations required softer materials, rounded edges, and breakaway designs. Today, dashboard controls must meet strict standards for energy absorption and injury prevention. The satisfying click of a metal knob turning has been replaced by softer interfaces that prioritize protection over tactile pleasure. Cars requiring only a single rearview mirror left massive blind spots that drivers in the 1970s accepted as normal. Many vehicles rolled off assembly lines with just one mirror mounted inside the windshield, offering a narrow view of whatever was directly behind. Side mirrors were often sold as optional accessories, add-ons that cost extra money families decided to save. Drivers changed lanes by turning their heads, trusting peripheral vision and hoping nobody occupied spaces they could not see. Motorcycles, compact cars, and pedestrians disappeared into blind zones stretching across entire lanes. Accidents happened when drivers merged confidently into spaces already occupied by vehicles they never noticed. The carnage accumulated as visibility remained a luxury rather than requirement. When regulators mandated driver-side mirrors and eventually passenger-side mirrors as standard equipment, safety improvement was measurable and immediate. Today, vehicles must include multiple mirrors meeting specific size and positioning requirements. The single mirror setup that once seemed sufficient is now recognized as dangerously inadequate for modern traffic. Speedometers. Reading well beyond any legal limit encouraged dangerous driving throughout the 1970s. Dashboards displayed gauges climbing to 120 or 150 miles per hour, numbers that seemed to dare drivers toward impossible speeds. Young drivers especially saw those high numbers as challenges, goals to achieve on empty roads when nobody was watching. The psychological effect was real and measurable, with people driving faster simply because speedometers suggested the car could handle it. Manufacturers marketed these high readings as signs of power, never mentioning that most vehicles would become dangerously unstable long before reaching indicated top speeds. Police reported crashes involving drivers attempting to hit numbers printed on their dashboards, goals having nothing to do with safe operation. When regulators noticed the connection between exaggerated speedometers and reckless driving, they imposed limits requiring gauges to max out at 85 miles per hour. Today, while digital displays have complicated these restrictions, the era of gauges daring drivers to chase dangerous speeds has largely ended. Cars without child-proof rear door locks allowed small hands to open doors at highway speeds throughout the 1970s. Children playing in back seats could grab handles, push buttons, and tumble onto pavement before parents realized what was happening. Latches were designed for adult convenience, not child safety, with mechanisms simple enough for toddlers to operate accidentally. Families driving at 60 miles per hour had no protection against curious fingers that found door handles irresistible. Some children fell from moving vehicles and survived with devastating injuries, while others were killed instantly on highways where following traffic could not react. Parents screamed helplessly as doors swung open and small bodies disappeared, accidents happening so fast there was no chance to intervene. When investigators documented these preventable tragedies, regulators demanded locks children could not defeat from inside the vehicle. Today, child safety locks on rear doors are mandatory, requiring adult activation from outside before doors open. The simple switches preventing tiny hands from causing tragedy did not exist when luck was trusted more than engineering. Ignition systems without steering wheel locks made car theft embarrassingly easy throughout the 1970s. Thieves needed only basic tools and a few seconds to start almost any vehicle and drive away without the key. Hot wiring was not a specialized skill, but common knowledge passed around neighborhoods where stolen cars became transportation for joyrides and getaways. Families parked their vehicles and hoped for the best, knowing that locks on doors meant nothing if the ignition itself offered no resistance. Insurance rates reflected the epidemic of auto theft, with premiums climbing as vehicles disappeared from driveways, parking lots, and shopping centers. Some stolen cars were stripped for parts within hours, while others were used in crimes and abandoned when their usefulness ended. When regulators mandated steering column locks that engaged automatically when keys were removed, theft rates dropped dramatically. Today, vehicles without these anti-theft interlocks cannot be registered or sold, and modern systems have added immobilizers and encrypted key codes. The unlocked ignitions of the 70s created an open invitation that thieves no longer receive. Windshields made from standard glass instead of laminated safety glass shattered into deadly fragments during 1970s collisions. When impact occurred, the glass did not hold together but exploded into jagged shards that sliced through faces, necks, and arms with surgical precision. Drivers and passengers who survived the initial crash often suffered horrific lacerations from the barrier meant to protect them from wind and debris. Families trusted their windshields without understanding that the glass itself could become the most dangerous element in any accident. Children sitting in front seats faced particular risk, their smaller bodies positioned at exactly the height where flying glass caused maximum damage. Emergency responders grew accustomed to finding victims covered in cuts that had nothing to do with the collision itself. When regulators mandated laminated safety glass that held together on impact, the carnage dropped dramatically. Today, all automotive glass must meet strict standards for impact resistance and fragment retention. The clear view that drivers trusted now comes with protection built into every layer. Doors without side impact beams offered almost no protection during T-bone collisions throughout the 1970s. The thin metal panels separating passengers from oncoming traffic crumpled instantly when struck, allowing intruding vehicles to enter the passenger compartment with devastating force. Families sitting inches from those doors had no idea that nothing substantial stood between them and disaster. Side impacts were particularly deadly because the human body has almost no natural protection against forces from that angle. Children in car seats positioned against doors were especially vulnerable. Crash investigators documented how easily doors collapsed inward, crushing occupants who might have survived frontal collisions. When regulators demanded side impact beams capable of redistributing crash forces, survivability improved immediately. Today, doors must contain reinforced structures meeting strict federal standards for intrusion resistance. The panels that once offered only the illusion of protection now contain engineered barriers designed to save lives in the crashes that matter most. Tires without speed ratings allowed drivers to push rubber beyond safe limits throughout the 1970s. People bought tires based on price and tread pattern without understanding how fast those tires could safely travel before risking catastrophic failure. Highway driving at 70 miles per hour stressed tires designed for much lower speeds, causing blowouts that sent vehicles spinning without warning. Families loaded cars for vacations, checked air pressure, and assumed their tires could handle anything the highway demanded. Heat buildup at sustained speeds degraded rubber compounds never engineered for such stress, creating failures that happened suddenly and violently. Drivers who experienced blowouts often lost control completely, unable to compensate for sudden drag and instability. When regulators mandated speed ratings clearly marked on every tire, consumers finally had information needed to match rubber to driving conditions. Today, tires must display ratings indicating maximum safe speed, and mismatched tires can fail safety inspections. The unmarked rubber of the 70s has been replaced by informed choices saving lives every day. Headlights with inadequate brightness left drivers nearly blind on dark roads throughout the 1970s. The sealed beam units that came standard on most vehicles produced a dim yellow glow that barely illuminated the pavement ahead. Night driving became an exercise in faith, trusting that nothing dangerous lurked just beyond the weak circle of light reaching from the car. Families traveled after sunset on highways where wildlife, debris, and stalled vehicles appeared as sudden shadows offering almost no reaction time. The technology existed for brighter lighting, but regulations kept American headlights decades behind what other countries required. Pedestrians and cyclists were struck by drivers who genuinely could not see them until impact was unavoidable. When regulators updated lighting standards to allow halogen and eventually LED technology, visibility improved dramatically. Today, headlight brightness and beam patterns must meet strict federal requirements designed to illuminate hazards before they become emergencies. The dim glow that once defined night driving has been replaced by lighting systems that actually show drivers what lies ahead. Exhaust systems rooted beneath passenger compartments leaked carbon monoxide into cabins throughout the 1970s. Rust, poor welds, and inadequate sealing allowed invisible poison to seep through floor pans into the air families breathed during every drive. People felt drowsy, developed headaches, and blamed long trips without suspecting their vehicle was slowly poisoning them. Children riding in back seats were especially vulnerable, absorbing the colorless gas more quickly than adults realized. Some families never understood why they felt sick until mechanics discovered exhaust leaks present for months. Deaths attributed to carbon monoxide poisoning in vehicles were difficult to track because symptoms mimicked other conditions. When regulators demanded tighter exhaust standards and better cabin sealing, the silent killer lost much of its access to passengers. Today, exhaust routing and integrity must meet strict requirements, keeping combustion gases outside the vehicle. The invisible danger that once drifted through floorboards has been engineered away by standards the 70s never imagined. Introduced in 1974 by Ford, the Mustang was a response to the oil crisis, offering a smaller, more fuel-efficient version of the American classic. This version aimed to adapt the Mustang's legendary status to the changing times, featuring a range of four-cylinder engines alongside the traditional V8 to appeal to a broader audience. The Mustang did not capture the hearts of Mustang purists who missed the power and presence of the earlier models. Despite this, the Mustang reminds us that understanding your audience is key. It achieved significant sales, showing that there was a market for more economical sports cars. The Mustang is recognized for bridging the gap between the first generation's muscle car heritage and the resurgence of performance in later models. The fifth generation of Plymouth Furies were when Chrysler truly hit gold. Their iconic two-door convertible style returned, as well as many other options for four doors and convertibles. The 1969 line of Furies came with three models, the Fury 1, 2, and 3. If only the people who were in charge of the naming were as creative and talented as the ones who came up with the mechanical aspects of the car especially. Having Fury as a name leaves a lot of room for iconic naming choices for different models, something this car had a lot of. The standard across all of them, though, was a 3-speed manual transmission with a torque flight automatic transmission being optional. This car left very little to be desired, and it truly felt like one very swaggy work of art. Swivel front seats were the height of automotive sophistication, and just a little absurd. Instead of climbing awkwardly out of a low-slung car, passengers could simply rotate the seat toward the door and step out gracefully. It was part luxury, part stage performance. The seats turned with a satisfying click, like a spotlight following its star. Women loved them for preserving skirts and dignity, and men enjoyed the novelty of spinning like captains in a command chair. But after a few years, the mechanics jammed, and the gimmick wore thin. Chrysler and GM both tried to perfect the idea, adding chrome trim and sales pitches about space-age convenience. It was flashy, futuristic, and fragile, an elegant dance partner that couldn't keep the rhythm. Still, it captured the decade's obsession with ease, comfort, and flair. In the 1950s, even getting out of the car was supposed to feel glamorous. The swivel seat vanished quietly, replaced by practicality, but for a moment, it made every exit look like a movie scene. The AMC Gremlin was the strangest-looking car of its time, and somehow that made it perfect for the 1970s. It was small, weirdly cut off in the back, and cheap enough to make you feel smart for buying one. AMC built it as an economy car, a way to keep up with gas-conscious buyers and compete against Ford and Chevrolet. The result looked like half a car, but it worked. It ran, it saved fuel, and it was simple to fix. For young families or first-time buyers, the Gremlin was a quirky kind of pride, different, affordable, and uniquely American. It became the underdog's car, loved by some, mocked by others. Teenagers painted flames on the sides, while parents just prayed it would survive the winter. Its oddball charm made it unforgettable, and even now, collectors restore them out of pure nostalgia for when weird was wonderful. The Gremlin was never glamorous, but it represented something honest. A car built for people who did not care what others thought as long as it got them home. Chrome hood ornaments were the jewelry of the open road. Every car wore one proudly: a leaping gazelle, a soaring rocket, a sleek airplane pointing toward tomorrow. They weren't just decorations, they were declarations of identity. Each sculpted figure reflected its maker's philosophy: speed, grace, or power cast in shining metal. The hood ornament was a driver's crown, gleaming at the front of the car like a promise of confidence and pride. People polished them, until they sparkled so bright they could blind the morning sun. They weren't just metal, they were the spirit of motion carved into form. The sunlight would catch them just right, sending sparkles across the hood like starlight. They made even the slowest car feel alive, ready to run. Pontiac's Silver Streak and Packard's Goddess of Speed became works of art in motion, immortalized in chrome. But by the late 1950s, safety rules and minimalist trends dimmed their shine. Pedestrian safety didn't pair well with flying mascots. Still, for collectors and dreamers, those ornaments remain frozen symbols of the era's pride. They were proof that cars once had souls and wore them right on their hoods. Today, they glimmer from museum floors and car shows, reminders of a time when elegance outpaced caution. One of the best pillarless hardtops you would find out there, the Grand Prix Pontiac was one of the brand's best intermediate personal luxury cars. Their focus for the 1969 Pontiac was to be an all-rounder with a marketing scheme focused on making customers know that this car drove as good as it looked, if not better. Manual transmissions, several engine options and 2 different engine sizes, 390 horsepower, and bucket seats with a console fully integrated into an instrument panel so that you had maximum comfort. You also had an electric rear window defogger, so really, while this was one expensive purchase you would want for nothing else if this was the choice you were making. It sold over 112,000 units, and considering each car cost more than $4,000, you can imagine how much money that is. It even inspired the looks of other cars like the Monte Carlo and some Ford and Chrysler models. The Ford Pinto trotted onto the automotive stage in 1971, produced by the Ford Motor Company. It hoped to gallop into the hearts of Americans with its compact size, affordability, and fuel efficiency. Pitched as an affordable option for young families and new drivers, it quickly gained popularity in the early 70s with its straightforward design and fuel efficiency, appealing during the era's rising fuel costs. Initially, it succeeded, offering a practical solution during the oil crisis. Yet the Pinto's legacy was marred by safety controversies, notably its tendency to catch fire in rear-end collisions due to a poorly designed fuel tank. Ford put the brakes on the Pinto in 1980. Despite its flaws, the Pinto remains a case study in the crucial role of safety in automotive design and the impact of corporate decision-making on public trust. The car also fostered a vibrant subculture of enthusiasts, preserving its memory through clubs and restoration projects. The Ford Pinto was supposed to be the people's car of the 1970s, a small, affordable option for families feeling the pinch of a struggling economy. It was light, modern, and efficient, the kind of car that promised freedom without the price tag. But what drivers got instead was one of the most infamous safety disasters in American automotive history. The Pinto's rear gas tank was a ticking time bomb, vulnerable to exploding in rear-end collisions. Yet for years, families kept driving them because they had no other choice. You would see Pintos sputtering along highways, packed with groceries, kids, and hope that it would make it another few months. Still, it was cheap to run, easy to fix, and looked good enough to make you feel proud, until you heard the news reports. People joked that the Pinto was the only car where a fender bender could double as a barbecue. For those who owned one, it was a mix of pride and anxiety, a symbol of survival in an era of economic struggle. Despite everything, the Pinto sold millions, proving that in the 1970s, affordability beat fear every time. The car may have been flawed, but for countless Americans, it represented something powerful, the freedom to drive, even when the odds and the engineering were against you. Even if you are not a big car person, and we hope that by the end of this video you will be, you must have heard of Cadillac, and what better model to talk about than the Eldorado? Considered the gem of the company as it would always be sitting at the top of their sales reports. This car first dropped in 1953, but by the time of the decade of flashiness, there had already been 8 entire generations of the beauty. This redesign saw the car reimagined as a front-wheel coupe with a hardtop, and it was considered to be Cadillac's first step into the market for luxury cars. We have to say, that is certainly one way to make a statement. Everything under the hood was just as impressive as the design, with a 425 automatic turbo-hydromatic transmission and the latest technology which led it to achieving speeds of 70 miles per hour in around just a few seconds. Built-in thermos and picnic sets were the luxury flex of the 1950s driver. Long road trips demanded class, and no elegant traveler would drink lukewarm coffee from a gas station. So high-end cars came with perfectly matched picnic gear, thermoses, metal cups, plates, and even cutlery, all tucked neatly into the trunk. It was travel as an art form, where every roadside stop could become a scene from a movie. Families would unfold their sets under the open sky, sipping coffee and eating sandwiches off monogrammed dishes. The clink of metal cups against the car's chrome bumper sounded like freedom itself. Each piece had its place, held in leather straps or polished wood compartments, ready for the perfect roadside meal. Even something as simple as pouring coffee became a performance of grace. It was automotive glamour meeting backyard leisure. Cadillac, Lincoln, and Rolls-Royce all dabbled in it, turning cars into rolling dining rooms. But as fast food chains began spreading across America, the picnic lost its prestige. The built-in sets became relics of a slower, gentler kind of travel, when the journey itself mattered as much as the destination. They were the perfect symbol of the 1950s dream: comfort, style, and a little touch of fantasy in every drive. Today, finding one of those old sets feels like uncovering treasure, a reminder that even coffee breaks used to have class.
The Chevrolet Chevette, introduced by General Motors in 1976, aimed to offer simplicity and efficiency at a time when fuel economy became paramount. This subcompact became a bestseller, appealing to consumers with its straightforward, no-frills approach to transportation. Popular from the late 1970s to the 1980s, the Chevette's appeal lay in its affordability and the era's fuel crisis, though it faced criticism for its poor performance and basic comfort, which became defining traits of the car. It demonstrated that there was significant demand for basic, reliable vehicles, particularly during times of economic uncertainty. Its success proved that simplicity could indeed win, marking the Chevette as a noteworthy example of how understanding market needs leads to success. The Chevette is celebrated for its role in making transportation accessible to a wider audience, showcasing GM's ability to adapt to changing market dynamics.
Automatic headlight, dimmers better known as the Autronic eye, were the perfect mix of brilliance and frustration. A 1950s invention that promised the future and delivered sometimes. Perched proudly on the dashboard like a tiny robot eye, the sensor scanned the road ahead for oncoming headlights. When it worked, it dimmed your brights automatically, sparing everyone a blinding flash. But when it didn't, the results were unpredictable, sometimes plunging the driver into darkness or flashing the lights at passing mailboxes. It was an idea decades ahead of its time, born from the age's obsession with automation and ease. Drivers trusted it like a co-pilot, even when it had a mind of its own. General Motors marketed it as a marvel of electronic intelligence, a phrase that made every car sound half alive. At night, that little sensor gleamed beneath the windshield, proof that the future had arrived, at least until rain, bugs, or road signs confused it. Still, it captured the era's confidence that machines could handle what humans couldn't. It wasn't perfect, but neither was progress, and people loved it anyway. The Autronic eye faded out by the 1970s, but it left behind a legacy, an early glimpse of self-driving dreams, glowing softly under chrome and glass. The Ford Maverick was Ford's answer to the simple question: what can we sell to people who cannot afford a Mustang? It was marketed as sleek, simple, and affordable, three words that defined American car buying in the 1970s. With its rounded body and no-frills interior, the Maverick looked sportier than it actually was. Still, it was a hit with first-time buyers and families who just needed something that ran. Its small six-cylinder engine sipped gas during a time when every gallon counted. It was the kind of car you bought because it made sense, not because it made you proud. But for a few years, it fooled the world. It looked good enough to feel like a win. The Maverick was proof that sometimes pretending to have a sports car was just as satisfying as owning one. The Maverick was cheap but charming, the kind of car you could rely on even when it coughed on cold mornings. Ford called it the simple machine, and they were right. It didn't promise more than it could deliver. For people living paycheck to paycheck, that honesty mattered more than horsepower. The Maverick was the car that fit your budget, your driveway, and your life, proving that in hard times, reliability was the greatest luxury of all. Under dash, cigarette drawer. Lighters were one of the strangest features to ever appear in family cars. Imagine pulling out a chrome drawer beneath the dash, filled not with storage, but with glowing cigarette lighters, sometimes 6 or more at once. It was an era when everyone smoked, and cars catered to the habit with pride. Each lighter had its own socket, each socket a glowing ring of red heat, ready for a puff at any moment. When the drawer slid open, it lit up like a control panel, glowing like a fiery constellation. The hum of the road mixed with the crackle of tobacco as smoke curled into the sunlight. It was convenience, ritual, and rebellion all rolled into one chrome compartment. Some drawers even came with ashtrays built right beside them, so the smoke never had to pause. It was comfort through combustion, a product of a time when smoking was sophistication. Passengers could light up in unison as if toasting to the future. The smell of tobacco, leather, and gasoline became the signature scent of the 1950s road trip. Of course, safety wasn't exactly top of mind. Burn marks and tiny fires were common. But back then, convenience trumped caution. The cigarette drawer faded with the rise of health warnings, but it remains one of the most bizarre relics of the era. A literal drawer of fire, built into every drive. For a name like the Cutlass Supreme, Oldsmobile actually went with a mid-sized design for this, despite it being a premium car that sat at the very top of the Cutlass range, both in performance and price. The proof is right there, since it also sold the highest in that entire catalog and was one of the most demanded Oldsmobile productions ever made. Its rear-wheel drive and two-door hardtop design made this car the epitome of style. It was one of the most elegant-looking sedans you could get your hands on, and the transverse front engine with 5.4 liters capacity and a 4-speed manual transmission for people who really like to test their driving skills. Nothing about driving a set of wheels like this would leave you unsatisfied, and that is exactly the luxury experience General Motors was looking to offer.
In the early 70s, the Chrysler Corporation unveiled the 1970 Chrysler Imperial to compete with the luxury of Cadillac and Lincoln, establishing it as a pinnacle of opulence. Equipped with lavish amenities like automatic climate control, power seats, and advanced window mechanisms, it showcased the peak of technological prowess. Its expansive, fuselage-like design and hidden headlights accentuated its unique aesthetic, setting a new standard in automotive luxury. However, its debut coincided with a growing demand for fuel efficiency and environmental sustainability, diminishing the appeal of its powerful V8 engine during the oil crisis. Although its state-of-the-art features and luxurious details positioned it as a symbol of comfort and prestige, the shift towards smaller, more economical vehicles saw its popularity wane. Yet, for its owners, the Imperial epitomized American luxury, providing unparalleled comfort and a distinguished presence that secured its status as a beloved automotive classic.
The Ford Thunderbird was a hardtop sedan that was widely believed to be the best in the game, or at least in the top 3 as a bare minimum. Doubling both as a sports car and a personal luxury car, it came with many different options, including the choice between a 4-seat convertible or a Dix passenger hardtop coupe. If that was too excessive, they also gave a 5-seater option. Really looking out for those families with a gaggle of kids and the ones with just one, right? If you do recall the glory days of this unit, then you can thank Louis Crusoe for spearheading the development so wonderfully, as well as William P. Boyer, an incredible designer for Ford who worked on the original 2-seater. They also had a fun little his and hers scheme in 1971 with 2 different models sold as pairs, with all kinds of features like tape recorders and telephones. Front bench seats turned every car into a couch on wheels. Before seatbelts and center consoles, the front seat stretched wide enough for three, driver in the middle if needed, sweetheart snuggled close on date night. It was comfort, intimacy, and rebellion rolled into one. Teenagers loved them for reasons their parents pretended not to know. Families loved them because they meant room to pile in the kids or the dog. That wide seat was where countless first kisses happened, where families sang along to the radio, where life's small moments unfolded between the lines of the highway. The bench seat made driving feel human. It was connection stitched into vinyl. Everyone fit, and everyone belonged. And every road felt a little freer when no armrest divided you from the one you loved. The bench seat wasn't fancy. It was familiar, soft, and forgiving, built for a slower kind of driving. It made even short trips feel communal, every passenger part of the same shared space. But when safety and design evolved, individuality replaced togetherness. Bucket seats divided what bench seats once joined. Still, for anyone who ever slid across that endless cushion under dim dashboard light, the memory lingers of closeness, laughter, and a little harmless mischief parked under the stars. The Chevrolet Chevette was a car that proved one simple truth: Americans would buy anything cheap enough. When it rolled off assembly lines in 1976, it promised affordability, economy, and nothing more. It was loud, underpowered, and slow, but it was also dependable in its own humble way. For broke college students, struggling families, and blue-collar workers, the Chevette became the go-to ride when every dollar mattered. Its boxy frame and buzzing engine didn't inspire confidence, but you could count on it to get you to work and back. It was the car that taught a generation humility. No one felt superior behind its wheel, but everyone felt grateful. You didn't own a Chevette to impress anyone. You owned it to keep moving when life was standing still. The Chevette was survival with a steering wheel, and that made it unforgettable. The car's lack of luxury became part of its identity. It was a badge of practicality in a decade obsessed with cutting costs. People learned to love its quirks, even as they cursed the uphill climbs and the endless rattle of the dashboard. You didn't brag about owning a Chevette, you just nodded at the neighbor who was fixing his too. It was the car for people who didn't need flash or speed, just four wheels, a steering wheel, and the will to keep going. Tissue dispensers and dashboards were elegance hiding in plain sight. Mounted in gleaming chrome, they dispensed tissues like fine napkins from a high-end lounge. Every sniffle, sneeze, or lipstick smudge was met with grace. It wasn't just about hygiene, it was about class. Only the most thoughtful cars offered such small luxuries, where even a cold could be handled in style. Passengers admired the detail, pulling tissues from shining holders trimmed in gold or silver. Kleenex partnered with automakers, turning a humble necessity into a badge of sophistication. For families, it was a quiet convenience during long road trips. For drivers, it was another symbol of refinement. Even though it sounds absurd today, it reflected an age when design served dignity as much as function. Every feature had to be beautiful, even the ones meant for runny noses. The dashboard tissue box disappeared with the minimalist 1960s, but it remains a testament to an era that refused to separate utility from grace. Now, this might be a name that only car heads will recognize, but in that world, it is quite a legendary one. The Continental Mark series was an entire lineup of luxury cars that the Ford Motor Company held as their pride and joy for a long while. In the 1970s, the Mark IV and Mark V models were particularly popular. Even the Mark III was doing pretty well, despite there being two new variants to contend with, but people adored the design of the car, such as the dented windows or the grille and deck lid. Plus, it was within these three cars that the Ford 460 cubic-inch V8 engine first made its debut. These vehicles were considered the most advanced in the market at the time, so anything that's in the car's manufacturing is top of the end by default. It also was the first brand to ever do radial tires. The biggest benefit of this series was all the customer choice that was now available. They had a luxury car that fit anyone's preferences in a decade where personal style and identity made you very cool.
The AMC Pacer rolled out in 1975, produced by American Motors Corporation with a wide body and large glass area, presenting an innovative and futuristic design. Its aim was to offer a compact car without compromising on space and visibility, featuring an unusually wide design for its category. The Pacer was ahead of its time in terms of design and is remembered for its unique appearance and attempts to improve passenger comfort. Its performance and fuel economy, struggling to meet expectations during the fuel-conscious era, led to mixed reviews. The Pacer shows us that innovation needs to be balanced with practicality. Despite its mixed reception, the Pacer has become a beloved icon of 1970s automotive design, celebrated for its bold attempt to rethink the compact car.
It is a good time to mention Monte Carlo since that is next on our list. We are not even halfway through yet, and the cars so far have already set quite the standard. However, what about a bit more of a tamer car? Maybe you are not one for all the spectacle and novelty of a Buick, an Imperial, or a Grand Prix. This was the car for you because it had enough in common with them while still being a bit more low-key. Sure, it had an A-body chassis, just like the Buicks, but it would also have chrome grills, normal round headlamps, and a 2-barrel carburetor along with a small block V8. What's all that mean? It did not pack the same power, but it looked the part and came close enough. Some of what was beneath its surface was cutting-edge stuff, and some of it was industry standard like the front disc brakes. All of it was worth every penny though, and it still holds a lot of value as a vintage collectible. Highway record players were a wild experiment in turning cars into mobile living rooms. Built into the dash, these tiny turntables spun 45 RPM records while the world blurred by outside the window. In theory, it was the ultimate modern comfort. Music on demand, no matter where you went. The problem, of course, was gravity. Every bump in the road made the needle jump, scratching favorite songs into static. But for drivers on smooth highways, it was magic, rock and roll spilling out of a moving car for the first time. Chrysler's Highway Hi-Fi was the most famous attempt, offering custom records with deeper grooves to survive potholes. You could play Sinatra, Elvis, or the Andrews Sisters as the white lines zipped beneath the tires. It wasn't cheap and it wasn't perfect, but it was pure 1950s daring, a belief that comfort and entertainment should travel everywhere with you. Even when it failed beautifully, with style that outshone its practicality. The idea lived on, paving the way for the cassette players, CD decks, and Bluetooth stereos that came after. Today, it sounds absurd, but in the golden age of chrome and vinyl, a car that could sing was a dream worth chasing. The Plymouth Valiant was not the kind of car anyone bragged about owning. It was plain, boxy, and designed purely for function. But what it lacked in style, it made up for in reliability. In the 1970s, when cars broke down almost as often as the economy did, that meant everything. The Valiant started every morning, got you to work, and kept going for years with minimal maintenance. It was the car that outlasted marriages, mortgages, and even the mechanics who used to fix it. The Valiant didn't need attention. It just needed gas, and maybe a pat on the dashboard for good luck. Its quiet hum became the soundtrack of working-class America, proving that dignity could ride in on 4 faded tires. People joked that the Valiant could survive the apocalypse, and in a way, they were right. It wasn't pretty, but it ran forever, which made it priceless to families scraping by. You could ignore the peeling paint and cracked seats because the engine still purred like it was brand new. The Valiant was a quiet hero of its time, a car that expected nothing but gave everything back in dependability.
First up is the AMC Gremlin, introduced by American Motors Corporation in 1970. This car made waves with its unique design, becoming an icon of American culture with its distinct hatchback, compact size, and economical price. Despite its initial popularity and the novel approach of offering a smaller, more fuel-efficient vehicle during the oil crisis, the Gremlin was plagued by performance and reliability issues. It struggled with a lack of power and faced criticism for its handling. By 1978, the Gremlin had driven its last mile. Yet it left behind a legacy of boldness and innovation, reminding us that sometimes it's okay to be a little different. The Gremlin is remembered for its distinctive styling, including the option for Levi's denim-inspired interior upholstery, making it a memorable symbol of the era.
Part of the big hitters in what was known as the fuselage era, the Chrysler Imperial was the flagship of the Chrysler Corporation and the highlight of the Imperial division of theirs as a whole. There are some things in life that you just take a look at and know they are the best in their world or field, and the Imperial lived up to its name by giving off that exact impression. Truly, one would need just a glance to figure out that this was a car for the elite, for the deeply passionate, or for those with imperial levels of money. It was another time in the car world of sheer automotive superiority. Was the best thing the fashionable steering wheel? The tail lamps that were sunken ever so slightly into the canted bumper? The beveled trunk lid or the large low-hanging roof that gave it an air of silent confidence? Either way, this car was the jewel of every fanatic's eyes. Before you go, tell us which banned car feature surprised you most. Tap like if this drive-through forgotten dangers hit home. And subscribe so you never miss the next journey into history hiding under every hood.